Welcome back, everyone. Today we have Garrett here. He is the owner of G-Build, a roofing company. Not only that, though, he is a religious man, has a nonprofit, but not only that, though, he also has a retreat where he helps men find themselves again. Garrett, thank you so much for being part of the podcast. Welcome.
My pleasure. Honored, John. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're gonna dive right into it. I mean, kind of tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you want to tell me about? A little bit about your faith, your walk, how you got to where you are today.
All right. I was born. No, I won't go back that far. I guess I grew up in churches. I go to church every Sunday with my parents and my family. Had a big family, youngest of five children. I was, but I was there. I was in attendance. I was never really into it. Understood what it meant. And I went off and got married, and we traveled around the country with my job for a while in finance, and we eventually wound up moving back to my wife's hometown of Conway, Arkansas. When I was there, just got a drawing and pulling to go into a church, and kind of went there and was shocked at the service in a good way. It was one of those things that hit me so well. I was like, I have to come back to the next service, and then I stayed for the next service, and there was like 8 services they had that weekend, or whatever. And I feel like I hit all 6 of them. But something really drew me in, and I had a radical shift in my belief and in my heart as to who I was, and really found God in that church. And went and got baptized and got into a men's group. And from the men's group, a friend of mine had gone to a conference, and he said, "Man, you got to go to this conference." And I was like, "I am not going to any conference. I'm not going to any hold my hand, kumbaya type of thing." But he's like, "All right, I paid for you to go." And so I went to this weekend experience, and it changed my life. Honestly, changed my life. And there was 8 of us who wound up going this thing together, and 6 of us came back and said, "We want this so bad. We want other guys to experience this." So we came back and we formed a nonprofit to help guys go through a very similar experience. And that was 2009 when we did it. And so that's kind of where my walk's been, is that we've now expanded from one market into another market into another market. We've now put on this nonprofit for basically 13, 14 years. We've been hosting guys for weekends. So my faith is, I'm rooted in, I want a relationship with Jesus Christ. That's what I want. And I'm not about religion as I am much a relationship. And that's where I think a lot of churches, are all about the religious side, but Jesus was not a religious man. He did not like the Pharisees. He wanted to have a relationship with people, and that's what we want to instill in these guys that come for a weekend. So long story long, but I got more on that. But I'll pause for questions or whatever.
Hey, John here. If you'd like to learn how to build your roofing business with social media, you can book a call with me down in the description down below. I'll show you exactly how I scale people like Garrett with free social media that you can do by yourself and get more clients. If that's something that you'd like, book a call with me. Let's get back right into the podcast. You started the nonprofit back in 2009. That's right?
Well, that's when we first attended. We actually started it in 2011.
Okay, so you've been doing it for, oh wow,
14 years.
it's 14 years. It's like over a decade.
Yeah.
Okay, and you talked about how you grew up in the household where your family was bringing you to like
Sunday services. Yeah.
Sunday services. When was it that it hit you? You say it was when you were going with your wife, right, in a specific congregation?
Yeah. I'd say my mid 30s. I think it was about, actually, I'll tell you, it was right before my 36. I was about to turn 36, because the running joke with my wife when I met her was that I was like, because I like to party. I had a good time and such. And I always made the joke that I wouldn't make it past 36. I was going to die at 36. And right after I got baptized at 36, I was literally walking home from my friend's house. I lived down the street, and one of the street lights was glowing, and I looked up, and it hit me. I'm getting spirit bumps on me now. It hit me, and I just heard, God said, how you said you're going to die at 36? And I was like, yeah. He goes, you did. You died to yourself, and you came alive for me there, right there. And I literally fell to my knees in the middle of the street at night and just started weeping. And I was crying. I was like, I never had an experience where, I mean, it wasn't an audible voice. It was the feeling and sense that words were coming in that I wouldn't have said. And that's how I interpret, hearing from him. So it was a big monumental change about 30 years ago.
Kind of walk me through the roofing company because I know the name G-Built kind of stems from it. Kind of walk me through that and the creation of your roofing business.
Yeah. I've always wanted, ever since fourth grade, I knew I wanted to be a business owner, and I always played like, oh, I was smarter than I was, and I made the little symbol of a G and a backwards G for Gerrit, and that's what I wanted it to be. But it was very similar to the Gucci symbol. But I always wanted to be a business owner, and but my career path took me to where I did 26 years in finance right after I did construction right out of high school. And I was praying about it after I became a leader. I was praying about it. Lord, what do you want me to do? And he's like, I had you in construction, but you kind of moved away from it because you chased your brother's dream. My brother was in finance. I wanted to be like my brother. So I got back into construction and I've worked for multiple companies and always trying to do the right thing, always trying to help a company grow. And there was always little things that hit me wrong. So I last year I was like, I'm going to do this on my own. And I formed an LLC, got that going. I was going to have Gerrit's in construction because I want to have my name on it. And I'm driving, literally driving to one of my nonprofit camps, just having some alone time. That's where I tend to really experience God is when I'm driving. God's like, okay, we're going to do this. He goes, well, we're going to do this together. And he's like, we're going to change the name to G Build. He said, because if you put G in front, that represents me, and the G represents you, and represents both of us. So we're going to do this together. So the G built. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get spirit bumped again. So I was like, okay, crazy, wow. And I got back, told my wife about it, and we're excited. And I'm going through how I can design this logo because it looked nothing like I really wanted it to be before. And I was thinking the T on the T. I was like, man, that could be like a cross. And so I want that to be represented in my logo in my business is I want people to understand I'm a man of faith. I follow a big man upstairs that I serve, and he holds me accountable to everything I do. And I'm not using it as a marketing ploy. A lot of times you hear companies that do that. This is my lifestyle. This is who I serve. This is who I am. I want to be the best representative and be a light. Because if I'm the only Bible that somebody has to read, I want to represent that well. So, and that's my actions.
Okay, kind of walk me through it. You kind of said you did, was it 20 years in finance or was it 10?
Yeah, 25 years in finance.
Okay, 25 years in finance. What made you kind of transition over to like roofing?
Like I said, out of high school, I did construction. I literally hit my thumb twice one day framing. It's a funny story in its own thing. I literally threw the hammer off the top of this hotel I was framing, and I was like, I'm getting an office job. And so I studied, got my Series 7 financial advisor's license, and 25 years later, after growing through corporate America, it was just big companies. And, I was at a point where I was having to let people go as a manager that were doing their jobs, because the big company wanted to downsize or whatever it was. And I just, in my heart, I couldn't do that to people. I mean, I think I cried more at exit interviews and firing people than the person that I was letting go because it was really breaking my heart. And so I got tired of just being a number and not having a relationship at big companies. And so I literally sat one day and I said, Lord, where do you want me? And kind of like I talked about a minute ago, he's like, well, I had you in construction before. That's where I wanted you. So I want you to get back in. So a guy in my church was company, and I talked with him about it, and he brought me on board, and there it goes.
Okay, and from then on out, you started working. So how many years in roofing do you have right now?
And this go around 9. A little over 9 years, but total with all my construction back in the years ago, I'm over 11 years of construction. I go.
Okay, so kind of walk me through it a little bit. You learned from a buddy of yours that was at your church, and you've developed the experience, and you like told me that when you were younger, you always wanted to be a business owner. I guess watching someone run their business and how you are gonna run it, what are kind of the pitfalls that if someone was watching you today going like, hey, I'd like to start my own construction business or roofing business, what are like a few tips and tricks that you would have for someone like that?
Well, I think you have to get a good mentor. I learned from some really good people. But there's always, I think, when you have an entrepreneurial mindset, there's always little things that you come to a decision. You go, oh, I would have probably handled it differently. Not that they handled it wrong; it's just different. And that kind of always hit me in my heart, and it kept compounding. I would have done that different. Not that it's wrong, but they did. I would have done it different. I would have done it different. And that's when I kind of made that decision that I really needed to do something independently out there on my own. But for somebody starting out new, I think you gotta prepare. I mean, you don't want to go out on a limb. First, pray about it, talk to God, and see what He's saying about that. Because if He says go do it, like it says, nothing can stop you. But I mean, from the physical, earthly side, it's preparation. I'm a process guy. I like processes. I like automation. I like making things sure that they're set up. I want a solid foundation to build on. So I take a lot of time in researching what kind of permits I need, what licenses do I need, what crews am I going to need, what specialties am I going to offer, what marketing do I want to use, how do I want to market. Do I want to be on my own as a sole entrepreneur, or do I want to be in partnership and bring others on? Do I want to bring employees on? All these little decisions that you have to kind of pray about and see what God's steering you on, and then just do that. That's what I would probably recommend to somebody.
Okay, and in your years of experience in the roofing industry, you've probably come across a lot of different. What I mean by that is there are
Oh,
good roofs, good jobs, bad
a lot of
jobs.
characters out there.
Exactly. So if a customer is like looking to shop around, trying to find like a roofing business to like do some work for them, how should a customer vet out what a company that they should go for? Because there's just so many like competitors out there, you know? Everyone's looking for the best deal. Some people want like the cheapest amount of work, but the cheapest isn't always the best. So if you were the customer, how would you vet out a roofing company?
I say always do your research. I mean, look into what this person is from a character standpoint. Look into the owner of that company. Um, Research, find them on LinkedIn, check out Facebook, see what kind of character that individual is. Look into the company itself, see what kind of reviews that they have. I'm a newer company, so I'm not going to have as many reviews out there. So I'm trying to get character references from friends and people that I've worked with before. But I would say always do your investigation, your due diligence, if you will. But then you always got to trust your gut on this. I mean, because ultimately, if something that appears to be too good to be true, it most likely is. I hear this every single day about homeowners. In fact, I just got back from an appointment. A lady was, talking to somebody who's been with a contractor before. He's promising her, I'll waive this and I'll do this for you. Like that. I'm going, okay, if he's promising you to break the law and he's promising you to help you here, that should be like a red flag. If I'm willing to break the law as a contractor, I'm probably willing to lie to you about the services or the quality that I'm going to be putting on. And what's sad is there are so many contractors that do this, but there are also homeowners that know this game, and so they try and pin the contractor into a corner and say, "Hey, ball for me." And I'm just not going to do that. I'm sorry. I love the color orange, as you can tell, but I don't want to wear orange every single day. When I have to go to gym, I'm trying to do everything correct and above board. Now it's construction. It's not always black and white. There's some gray areas that take place in there, but my character is if I do something wrong, I'm going to fix it. If something goes wrong, we're going to fix it. And that's why I just say make sure you're looking into the character of the individuals that you're going to do work with.
Talk to me about when you say that people will ask you to quote unquote break the law. I know that in the roofing industry, there are like definitely regulations, for example, like with marketing, what you can and cannot say and what you can and cannot do. But what is like the breaking the law part? Is it like insurance scam? Is that what that is? Or is it like something else?
Well, there could be multiple ways of doing it, but I think one of the most common ways out there is homeowners don't want to pay anything to get the roof repaired. I understand that. I'm a homeowner. I did it too. But when you signed on with your insurance company, you agreed to, I want this policy, and in exchange for this policy, I will pay a deductible. Well, nobody likes to pay that deductible. And now there's a lot of contractors that will come out and say, hey, if you go with me, I'll waive that deductible and then you just pay me with the insurance proceeds. Well, that's where the law breaks is when if I as a contractor send in an invoice that's different from what I charge you. So in other words, if I'm going to charge you the homeowner $20,000 to do the job, but now I send in an invoice for $25,000 to insurance to cover that deductible. So they pay the deductible because it's got to come out of somewhere. Now I've committed insurance fraud. So now that $5,000 that I've sent to insurance is considered fraud. Or the exchange is considered fraud because I submitted an invalid invoice to the insurance company. So I hear that.
No, that makes sense. No, that makes a lot of sense. Basically, where it's like if you send the business over to this roofing company, they'll pay the deductible, and they just like throw that extra pricing also in the quote.
And a big thing, John, I don't know if you have time for it, but in 2007, 2008, when the bubble housing boom took place, there are a lot of people that filed claims on their homes to get repairs done, but then they just walked away from the house and pocketed the money. And what happened is that the mortgage company who truly owned the home because you're financing it was going, okay, now I have a dilapidated property that needs repair, but the insurance money went with the homeowner, and now we have no money to fix it. So what happened is that the mortgage company, the insurance company got together and fixed this. So now there is no way legally for a homeowner to profit from an insurance claim on their home. Where before they'd cut a check for $25,000 in that scenario, and the homeowner go, okay, I'd find a contractor for 20 grand, and I get to pocket that $25,000 or the $5,000, and I can go to Disney World. So now that cannot happen legally. There's no way.
Okay, so it sounds like they tightened up a lot of loopholes, but
Yeah,
what you're telling me is like you still technically could get away with it.
not a lot, and there's still people that can do it, but they're going to come back and they're going to get you at some point in time. And a lot more money's going into investigating bad contractors and even bad homeowners. So I just rather do it right. You know, it's set up to protect the homeowners. If you pay your deductible, everything gets repaired. That's why working with me, not just a roofer, I'm a GC. I like the lady I just met with. We didn't just look at our roof. We looked at her windows. We looked at her fence. We looked at her siding. We looked at her interior work, and we got all that covered under one deductible. So instead of just paying $2,000 deductible, which she had, which was a very low one, for a roof, which would have been $20,000, we actually got $2,000 deductible for over $34,000 in damages by the time we took in everything that we looked at. So I saved her a lot of opportunity for her to save money because now we can go fix everything that was damaged because of the storm. So
Okay, kind of walk me through it because you said you were helping this lady do like basically an estimate, a quote with her. In your time working as a general contractor in the roofing business, what has been the go-to method for people to try to get more clients? Is how I did it when I was going through school and when I was doing my apprenticeship was it was literally you would work with someone for 5 to 10 years and throughout that time as your apprentice, you yourself would build up word of mouth, right? And that's how you kind of build clientele, which was through your work as well as word of mouth. And nowadays, like, how is it with your industry? Is it the same or is it a little bit different now?
well, I think the invention or the adaptation of technology that's come in, there's a lot more ways to find clients out there. I think what's difficult, and every market's different too, depending on where you are. Where I am in Dallas, Texas, there's in Dallas, Texas alone, there's probably 8 to 10,000 roofers out there. So doing the traditional methods of maybe marketing on a Facebook or a Google, which I call more traditional, is going to be hard because you're going to have to spend so much to get to that stuff, which is still very valuable. But I believe in diversification. You got to have multiple ways to go into clients. I like having Facebook ads. I like having Google. But what I think a lot of people are doing is knocking on doors, and where that comes as a good and a bad thing is good. You get the face to face, but a lot of people do not want anybody knocking their doors. We're hearing stories every single day. I heard one the other 2 weeks ago. A guy got beat up. A homeowner got beat up because he told the guy to get off his porch. He was knocking his door, and the guy didn't want to leave. And so that just makes it harder to do that. But if there's 8 to 10,000 roofers in DFW, how are you going to find me unless I'm going to spend $100,000 on marketing, or if I come face to face in a door? So finding people like yourself and John, what you do with your specialist at marketing who can help you eliminate the stuff that doesn't need to be done and get cut to the chase and really let your money be well spent in marketing. And that's how I think they're going to find you. It's you got to market multiple ways. A lot of engagement with property management companies, with insurance agents, with realtors. That's where I like to network in those areas to help them understand what I provide from a service, not on a residential, just residential, but on a commercial and an industrial level too.
It's funny because that was what I was kind of taught when I was studying for my real estate license, but also vice versa when I was going through school and also working with my person who was teaching me the trades, right? He was telling me like how networking with like realtors and people who like deal with homeowners is very important. But then it's like everyone kind of tells you that. So realtors are always getting hit up by people in the industry. So it's like,
You got to be cautious. It's a strategic relationship or partnership that you have to have. I always believe it's got to be a give and a take. I always taught my teams over the years that I got to earn your business in order to ask for your business. So I want to become a partner that makes your practice better. So I always go into looking to a realtor or an insurance agent and going, how can I help them become a better insurance agent? And using my finance background and managing clients and people over years, I can always bring something to the table that I feel like they can increase their ROI, their return on investment or time with me. both that as an insurance agent and a realtor, because realtors, they're trying to close their business and they get into the 7 day window option period of being able to close that job. And all of a sudden the home inspector comes back and goes, your roof is blown up. You need to get a new roof. Now they're scrambling to get somebody to get out there and put a roof on in 7 days, which is tough to do. Can be done, but tough to do. So I believe in strategic partnerships. Let's talk and figure out when's the best time for us to be engaged in the process from the start. The sooner we get involved, the sooner we can help you, the smoother your process is going to be from both an insurance agent and a realtor agent.
Okay, that makes sense. Trying to like get that all lined up and develop that working relationship by adding value to a company, which I think is very important. Kind of talk to me about these relationships that you've kind of seen the companies that you work for do, because obviously you've been in the industry for around 15 years, you told me roughly now?
Total, I'm at 11 in this industry, not 9 this go round.
11-ish. When you worked for your buddy's company with other people's companies, how did they get most of their clients? Was it mainly word of mouth? They do like traditional marketing, like you said? Like, how did they do it?
Go out and outdoors. Outdoors was what all three of these companies really preached, is go out and outdoors. So you were going out and expected to go knock 100, 150 doors a day and, reap whatever you sow. And so that was their main form. But it was tough because nobody, and this is for lack of better way of positioning, is that they've always been good at putting roofs on. They've been good at roofing. They were never really of the mindset of understanding how do we market our business to be different from everybody else. And, so they just did what they were familiar with. Nothing against them. And it still works. There are a lot of companies that are just do door knocking and are very successful. But I'm trying to read the writing on the wall. I'm trying to be sensitive to my clients. I'm trying to be sensitive to the scenarios that we're stepping into. And I understand you have to diversify. You have to have multiple streams of opportunity coming your way. Networking, marketing, door knocking, referrals. You need all those things to become, I think, a successful long-term business, because most roofing companies won't stay in business longer than 3 years because they're great at putting roofs on, but they're not great at managing the business.
It's funny you say that because when I was working at law firms, I would when I was legal assistant, right? I would always be requesting documents from doctors. People getting hurt, we need to like proof, so we would request that documents from doctors. It's interesting because doctors typically, when you think about it, is like, oh, we're gonna help people, cure them, write the medicine, prescribe and things, right? But in reality, it's like 70% paperwork. It's like keeping track of the paperwork, keeping track of the numbers, storing everything, making sure everything is up to snuff. And that is like a big bulk of the job. Same thing with dentistry, when the people get into like the field, they think that's like their one thing, but in reality, running the business is totally different because then you enter in a whole level of bureaucracy, paperwork that you're not really taught in school, which is interesting.
Yeah. That's why you got to have, as I said earlier, I'm a very process driven person. So I want to have a process that takes me from start to finish, that is streamlined as best I can. It's not shooting all over the place where I'm going to one vendor for this, one vendor for this, one vendor for this, because things get lost in those transitions. So I'm trying to streamline who I'm working with and making it easy and replicatable, because my ultimate goal is to scale. And what I mean by scale is get my processes down to where I'm here in local markets now, but maybe expanding my ring of influence to a different city or a different state at some point in time. But the only way you can do that is if you have a system that's replicatable. I mean, look at McDonald's. They don't sell the best burger in the world, but they sell more burgers than anybody else because they have good systems.
So they're essentially in the real estate business, which is
Yeah, I mean, you hear that side of it too. But it's process, though. They wouldn't get there if they didn't have a good process down from start to finish. That's from ordering I mean, not just ordering the drive through, but ordering their equipment and their, the food, all that stuff.
it sounds like you're like a very process driven person. Kind of walk me through the way that you do business right now. What is kind of your process or what is your mindset when it comes to it?
Are you taking from start to finish, like first initial client engagement, or I'm not sure where you want me to start with that?
Well, let's kind of go with building your company. Like if you wanted to like scale,
Mm-hmm.
if you wanted to do like open up a franchise, right? What are the milestones that you need to reach first before you kind of like go like, all right, I have my system locked in. Like, what are the certain milestones you need to see before you feel comfortable and like doing this in a different state?
I don't think it's a dollar amount as opposed to more making sure my processes are smooth. And what I mean processes is that from the time I get a lead to the time I introduce myself to the client that I'm going to be engaging with, to the time that I, finish that project and now put them into a contact management system where, I mean, they've been there, but now they're into a follow-up campaign, if you will, to stay engaged with them, because out of sight, out of mind. And, there was a great book. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was I don't know if it was How to Win Friends. I can't remember.
Yep. How to win friends and influence people. It's an old classic.
I know that's there, but the one thing that always says is that you need to be engaged with your clients between 6 to 8 times a year, whether it's through a letter, through a physical contact, through a text, through a phone call. If you can engage with people 6 to 8 times a year, they don't forget you. So I want to make sure at the end of my process that I have them put into a contact management campaign, if you will, that I can stay in front of those individuals 6 to 8 times a year. So the next time that they have a need, that they have the ability to call me because they remember who's their, or who their general contractor. So in order for me to scale, I want to make sure those processes are succinct to where, I think Nick Saban is a great college football coach. What I love about him is that he had a system, a plug and play, that he would take a player and put it into this particular system. I'm looking for individuals the same way, because I want to take a thoroughbred and let the thoroughbred run. I don't want the thoroughbred to get worried and bogged down with all the paperwork and the back office stuff. So if I have a good salesman that goes out and is great in engaging with homeowners, I want him to focus on his skills and his talents. And then I want to develop the other side of it, where I have all the operational side taken care of through automation, or I have key people put in place to handle those things for that individual. So in order to scale it, you got to make sure all those things are running smoothly and everybody's getting paid on time, because that's probably one of the biggest downfalls to our industry, is that guys get out over their skis, so to speak, and they start robbing Peter to pay Paul, as they say, and then their finances kind of spiral out. So, good financial management is important too.
What do you mean by that when you say the finances are bad? Is it because in the roofing industry you don't get paid right away when a job is completed, or is it just people are bad with the finances?
There's two ways of getting jobs from a roofing standpoint. There's one is retail, which is, hey, I'm a homeowner, I have a need. Maybe I'm selling my house right now. I don't have time to file a claim. I'm just going to go ahead and pay cash for it and get it done. So that's more a retail transaction. The insurance claim is when I file a claim with insurance. They're going to send an adjuster out. The adjuster is going to come out and fill out a report. This is what he sees as damage. I compare that with mine. If there's discrepancies, then I supplement for those discrepancies, supply supporting documentation, photos, reports, whatever is needed to get them to assess it. Now, I can't play the role as the adjuster. I can only put forth the case of, here's what I've seen. You make the call, Mr. Adjuster. And that can take some time. So if I go the insurance route, I've seen ones go as fast as 3 weeks. I've seen them go as slow as 2 years on some of this, because insurance companies want to debate this. So when I talk about getting out over my skis as a contractor, if I'm paying out for repairs, I'm paying for materials, I'm paying for labor crews to go out and do stuff, and that money out, and it's taking this, say it's 3 months to go out there for the insurance company to finally pay, and I'm not going to the homeowner and requesting them to fund it. I got to pay for it. And a lot of guys will, that's one problem. That's where a lot of guys fall into a bad spiral, and they get too much out there and they can't afford to operate any further. And I've seen that happen many, many times. In fact, I was just talking to an advisor right now on the way to this appointment with you. On the way back from this appointment, that's exactly where he is. He got all the money in for his side of the deal, but his company is owing money to a supplier, and they can't put material on a job that his client's fully paid for, but the company put that money towards something else, and now they can't afford to buy the material they need for this job.
So it ends up being like a catch-22 where you're
Well,
behind on this client and you got money from a different client. It goes there to like file him, and then it comes out like a Ponzi scheme when you put it that way.
yeah, that's what I said. It really is a rob Peter to pay Paul scenario, and it's not Ponzi. It's well, and I can see what you're saying with
Yeah,
that.
it sounds like it, but it's not. But I know what you mean, because you're basically trying to
It's
cover the cost of like the first project, and you just have to get more money in, and it just and because your payment is deferred until later, and you don't know when.
correct. Yeah, and that's why I said that's why the average roofing company always stays in business for less than 3 years, because they're great at putting roofs on. They have great, wonderful crews, I'm sure, but it's the business aspect of it that really it ties a lot of people up.
Yeah, it's interesting that you put it that way, because same thing with like marketing, right? Like it's one thing for people for you, it's one thing to have like the best product, But it's another thing to be able to market it. What I was
Yeah.
told and what I still believe is true is that it's better to have a mediocre product with great marketing versus a great product with like
No
bad
market.
marketing. The same thing with communications too.
So they say a great plan not executed is nothing versus a mediocre plan that's executed. It's actually execution. But I still believe that you can have a fantastic product and do great marketing at the same time. And that's what I'm banking. I'm going to put out a great product because that's what God had told me to do and how to conduct my business is be honest with everybody. And I know that going into it, I'm not going to win every situation. I'm not going to be the contractor of choice. I don't mind a client ever telling me no. It's just I want them to make an informed no. I want them to know the pros and cons. Hey, if you do this, this is what happens. If you don't do this, this is what happens. So they can make the best educated decision for themselves when they do something about their house.
Why wouldn't people just kind of go with you? Like you said, insurance essentially will cover it for the most part. If we're going through insurance, insurance will cover the work. But I'm assuming all the roofing contractors are also going to be saying the same thing. Insurance will cover it. What have you found has been like the biggest differentiator from a client's perspective of like I should go with Gerrit instead of like XYZ companies? Like if you were the customer, what are you kind of looking for when you're like comparing different roofing companies? Like you said, there's the people aspect of it, but like from people who don't know the trade,
Yeah.
what are typically like the common like what do you call it? The common objections that customers give you.
Well, I think a lot of times they don't have the money to do stuff. It's tough on people right now. Inflation's high. It's coming down. I'm not going to get into the whole political. It could be wherever their personal circumstances. Yeah, I wish I could say we could do all this and you don't have to have anything out of pocket. But that's an obligation that you came up with your insurance company when you got your policy. Like I told the lady a minute ago, her deductible was $2,000 and it was $34,000 in damage that the company agreed for. I said, "What a sale! I mean, you're getting $34,000, and it'll wind up being a little bit more because I know she has some other stuff that we're going to get purchased on there. But she's going to get 30 something $1,000 worth of repairs done on her house for $2,000 of a deductible. That's a great sale if you look at it that way. But I understand people. Another gentleman who was actually there at that appointment, his deductible was over 10 grand. And so coming up with $10,000 to do a similar project is that can be difficult for people. And then that's when you have to be creative to come up with different ways to either finance it or offset it. And offsetting it means, like I mentioned earlier, if I go after roof, I go after windows, I go after gutters, I go after all these other items that are damaged on the house, it gives me the ability to come back to that homeowner gate and say, which items do you want me to repair? Do you want me to just do the roof and just do the gutters? Because now I can take that money that they paid you for window repair, for fence repair, and we can apply that towards your deductible. But you also have to let the homeowner know if you don't get it repaired, insurance paid for it to be repaired. If you don't get it repaired, now that item is no longer insured going forward. And I can't submit an invoice that says that I repaired it because that's where fraud comes in.
Okay, so you're able to like move the money around a little bit on what you can and cannot work with. But once you do it, it's basically kind of like used up. You basically use your get out of jail free card essentially. And you're able to use it for like wiggle room, which is still okay. But if you do declare it, it just means like you won't be able to, or like you said, won't be covered in insurance moving forward.
There's ways to finance too, John. I mean, if the homeowner, there's companies that have much lower credit ratings that they'll lend to. I have some that go down to 550. I have some that go 600 credit scores that they can lend into to help pay for that deductible. And you remember, the deductible is a smaller part of the whole transaction in most cases. That gentleman with $10,000 deductible, he still probably had $30,000, $40,000 worth of damages that need to be done. So it is still a small piece, but there's other ways to do it too. A popular one is solar. A lot of people are using put solar because solar financing has lower thresholds and there's deduction. I can't speak on that, but there's tax credits and stuff that happen with solar that can really offset a lot of that cost to the homeowner. But I don't do solar.
It's funny you bring up solar because I know like with solar, a lot of money to be made, but I know some people stand by it, some people hate it. In your professional opinion as a roofer, yay for solar or nay for solar? Like putting it on yours personally.
I think it's going to come down. I think one of the biggest questions is your age, how long you and how long you're going to be in that house. If I'm going to be in that house for 15 years, I think solar is definitely where I would go. If I'm not, then I'm going to have to factor that cost of solar into the sales price for somebody else to take that over. So I'm still a huge believer in it because I think the break even point is a lot lower than people are. Because if you look at it, you're paying $300 a month for your electric bill. How long will you pay that? Forever, as long as you're in the house, right? Well, at least if solar, if I can get that payment to be about the same, but I now have an end date of 15 years out there or 20 years out there. Doesn't that make sense? And it's locked. As opposed to every single year, your electric costs are going to go up by 3 to 7, 8% because of inflation and interest. I give you a fixed lock payment that's locked in until it's paid off. So do I believe in? Yes, but you have to know. Like I said, I never mind a no. Just let's make an informative no. Everybody's situation is a little different based on how much electric they use and what kind of grid they're on. But I'm a big believer in. I think you just have to go through and look at the numbers and make a good solid assessment. If I had, my house, yep, absolutely.
That makes sense. When it comes to the industry, when it comes to like roofing and doing the actual work, what have you found as like a business owner? What your biggest struggle is when it comes to like starting your business?
As far as crews or
General, as like a business owner for you in your field.
I think it's just working capital. You got to have enough working capital to do this because, as we alluded to a little while, it's going to take some time to get a client base, and then depending on if they're going retail or insurance, you got to have the ability to carry some of those costs. So having enough working capital, understanding that it's not just putting a roof on, there are a lot of other factors. Because what I've seen is, and they're very rare, but you roofer will get stuck in a situation where it goes to court because there was a leak on a roof that leaked into the house, and now the client's suing for the internal damages, and you are only getting paid for the external damages now. So there's all these horror stories that happen out there, and if you don't protect yourself and think through those things at the beginning, those surprise spring up situations are the ones that could be detrimental to your business. And so I'm a big believer in protecting what you do and going slow because I don't want something to sneak up on me and be a detriment to the services that I'm providing to my clients.
In your industry, I'm guessing in that situation you would have like not homeowner insurance, but there's like insurance to like cover you for like those types of situation.
Yep, absolutely. We have a certificate of general liability for cost of insurance. I damage something in somebody's house, that it's covered. And the good thing for this is that where I'm at in Texas, Texas doesn't require that. And those that get it, they may have a $500,000 policy. But you look at some of the homes that we go into that, it's a million and a half, $2 million home. If I don't have a policy that covers all that, I'm at risk. And so it's making sure that you have proper coverage. It's making sure you have workman comp because if I send my guys up on to do a roof and one of those guys falls off, guess what? Guess who they can come after? The homeowner. If I don't have proper insurance, so that's a good key flag for interviewing companies. To go back to your further question, is make sure your contractor has adequate insurance to cover those needs. Because if somebody falls off a roof, they can sue you. And
Well, that's fair because it's like at the end of the day, it's the homeowner's property and they have like an onus of responsibility to some extent, whether or not it's like for work or not. So when it comes to that, though, you talked about how the financing part can be tough for business owners because they have to fork up the capital. Kind of walk me through because I know when I was in general contracting, when we're like doing like big renos, full on reconstructions or building up like a home, like the homeowner typically would be the one to pay for the cost of material. Is it also not like that in the roofing industry if it's like retail or is it like a little bit different?
and retail, yeah, I mean, there's different ways. On a retail side, you set up a payment schedule as to, and first one, payments usually to cover some of the material costs. But, it really comes down case by case of what you're doing with the individual home and the individual project. Yes, that's more of a retail line where the homeowner would, come up with the money initially in front of that. And that's ideally the contractor. If I had my druthers, I'd do nothing but retail. But that doesn't cater well to a lot of my clients. I'm going to be sensitive to their own individual situation because everybody's different. And even if they do retail with me, they can still do insurance for themselves. So they can still file a claim and just handle me as a retail basis and pay me, and I can be in and out. And I can send them my receipt. But what I don't want to see is that surprise where if I give them a receipt and it's for X service and now they send that receipt in, like we talked about, and it's different from what insurance is paying. I don't want to see them get surprised and think they're getting a bunch of money back when they're not going to get a bunch of money back because insurance made that adjustment. So again, never mind a homeowner wanting to go retail. In fact, that's ideal. It's just let's talk through the scenario, make sure that they're educated on what kind of pitfalls they can run into, and before they make a decision.
Okay, what are like the common pitfalls that customers kind of run into when they're kind of like trying to get like a roof or like just going through insurance or going through retail for the first time?
I think on the retail side, it again goes to the quality of the contractor that's doing the work. It's so funny is that I'm on all these roofing sites and blogs where people talk about their service. I don't know, call support groups, if you will, online. And somebody will put a question up on how to handle something, and you'll get 300 different opinions on how to handle a certain roofing situation. So it's really making sure that you have a good crew that knows the work. Well, I think that's critical that they can do with all the different types of roofing material that are out there. That they've done it before and they know how to install it the right way, and that they have good warranties. You know, a good warranty it could be lifetime, it could be 10 years, it could be 2 years, it could be 30 days. I don't know what every other company's going to do out there. Here in Texas, if you get somebody doing 2 years or more on a warranty, that's pretty darn good because you're going to know. It's not like you got a lot of shifting parts on a roof. You're going to know in 6 months with the storms we have whether it's a good work or not. So researching and understanding your contractor is really critical at getting the reviews on them.
You talk about finding a good crew. I know nowadays, at least like with the technology that's around, a lot of people are trying to do like more e-commerce, YouTubers, influencers. But do you find that there's like a shortage of good workers in the industry, or people are still like going like, "Hey, trades is always going to be there. Get into trades. You make good money." What have you found throughout the years is like the overall sentiment of trades nowadays?
Well, I think trades are becoming more and more stronger. In fact, for my kids, I've recommended trying to get in the trades because everybody wants digital and technical and all this stuff. They haven't gone to the hands-on blue collar trades as much. So I think it's becoming valuable because it's not going to go away. I think not to get into politics, but a lot's happened in our industry with what's happening with immigration laws. There's a lot of people that are no longer available. I'm not saying it's undocumented stuff, but it's on. So I make sure that I talk to all my guys and make sure that I have legal crews that are on there that are documented so that we can make sure that they're getting it's safe work environment for everybody that's in there. I don't want to do anything harmful to those people. But I mean, it's good to find. It's hard to find good crews that do it because there's a lot of guys that will just do it cheap. Especially here in Texas, when you don't need a license, you need a license to cut hair, you need a license to fix your electric, but you don't need a license to basically build your house. It's crazy. We're actually trying to do reform for that right now, and we're trying to actually get Congress to apply a license in Texas. But it's difficult. So whenever anybody can do it, that's when it's such horrible stuff that I see every day through either my own personal experiences or from others that I deal with on all these sites about a group support area for roofers of the work that's out there. And it's horrible. And that's why you got to find somebody that's been around, that's local, that's got good ratings, and that they carry the proper insurance and do all that stuff.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but you just told me that you don't need like a license to put on a roof. You can just
Right.
be so you just be some
Big storm
random.
big storm hits us, and I'm a veterinarian that's struggling right now. I could slap a magnet on my truck, go out there, and say, "Let me do your roof," and they have nothing about it. And that's the bad part about it is that you'll get all these guys that come from all over the country and to Texas, and they make all the promises in the world because they don't have to be licensed here. And they'll go, yeah, yeah, we'll give you, we'll waive the deductible. We'll give you some cash back, and we'll upgrade your roof like that, and make all the promises. The homeowner goes with it, and then they try and file everything in the end to the insurance company and realize fraud was committed. Guess who they come back with? It's on the homeowner because it's ultimately their policy. And they're supposed to know this. And what happens in Texas, even if it's a local crew in Texas or a contractor in Texas, I can just shut my business down. I can open another one. I could just file bankruptcy, shut it down, and open another one. And it happens all the time. I see this all the time out there, and it's really disgusting. The G bill, as part of what my motto is that we just don't build, we restore. It's a double meaning in that is that we don't just build houses, we want to restore houses, but I'm also trying to build back this industry and restore the credibility of what's taking place in this industry because there's a lot of bad people out there.
Ooh, I know exactly what you mean because it's kind of like the same thing with like marketing agencies. A lot of like roofers I speak with, they've been burned before with like marketers where they ask for large sums of money up front, and they don't provide a good service. Like same thing, promise,
Been there.
overpromise, and
Been there.
underdeliver.
Yeah, been there. We spent 10,000 over tens of thousands of dollars with marketing companies before that haven't come through before. So finding the right one is important and taking the time to do it.
Walk me through this. $10,000. Was this when you were working with a different company? This wasn't with your own company, right?
Yeah, this is working with another company. It's hard to understand who you're going to trust out there, and sometimes you just got to throw something out there and see if it works. And it was a referral of a friend that had this unique pitch opportunity to go out and extract client base from data that's out there, and you can really pinpoint person in need. And we're like trying to find the edge, trying to find something that's different from everybody else. And it's like, okay, let's take a shot. And we took a shot, and it didn't work out. No, we didn't get anything from that. So that really hurt. It's not to say that person was bad; it just true. And we didn't get much response.
I think that's kind of like the biggest thing is like with capital already being so tight, you're trying to acquire new clients, but when something like that doesn't come through, it's like a major blow because that 10,000 could have been going to products or labor to pay for your guys. Kind of walk me through it though, because I know like there's like a lot of roofing companies that are starting off and they want to get into marketing, but like you said, cash flow is an issue. When should someone actually consider getting themselves like paid marketing? When would you say is like a good point to do it? Because you need to cover costs. When should you even consider that?
I say from the beginning. I mean, you got to go in and understand that marketing is the key. And again, it comes down to the decision: how do you want to market your business? What is your line? Are you? And as I said from the beginning, I'm trying to do a diversified model. I'm trying to network. I'm trying to use my referral networks that I have. I'm trying to make new networks. I'm trying to use marketing through the traditional methods of both door knocking as well as through the Facebook, Google, all the SEO management. I want to have all those lines. So I think the sooner, because as a business, my business survives on having leads coming in and business coming in to me. How I go get it is up to me and what I'm comfortable with. But if I can have multiple lines coming in, that way I'm protected should one of them go down. Seasonality, technology changes, rules and regulations change in the state for solicitation of door knocking, whatever that is. I can't handle those things, so I got to make sure as a business owner I'm smart and have a diversified model of opportunity coming in. So I think the sooner you do it, the better.
Do you have a team of people who are door knocking right now or not right at the moment? Just you?
And it's just me.
Wait.
So that runs into time. So then you come down to time constraints because if I'm going knocking doors, I can't spend time on other things. So that's why also looking at multiple lines of marketing. If I can get somebody that can make calls, or I can, if I can get somebody to handle my Facebook, my Google, all those ads, that's marketing for me 24/7 out there. And that's because I never know when somebody has a need. They could get off. They could be a third shift guy who gets off at 6 in the morning, and that's when he gets on and he needs to make his calls. Well, as a business, you're not open at 6 o'clock. Maybe I'll take calls whenever I can take it, but most companies may not be open. So, how does he get his research? He may go through Google, he may go through Facebook and try to do research that way. So, you got to have all these different lines, lines in the pond, so to speak, when you're fishing.
When it comes to marketing with the roofing businesses, especially with the ones you work with, outside of the traditional Facebook ads, Google ads, and also door knocking, has there been any other way that they acquire leads, or has this been mainly the go-to for most companies?
I think that's the go-to. I mean, what I'm starting to hear more of now is call centers. That will call for you. That's kind of an oldie but a newie, so to speak. I was there when I first got in the business 9 years ago. Some call centers, and they kind of faded away, but now they're making a presence again. Because again, I think people are getting away from the door knocking because of, like I said, bad press that's coming out. The requirement of having the solicitation badge that you have to have in certain cities. A lot of companies don't want to take the time to go do that, and that's again another flag is if they're not willing to obey the law, they're probably willing to cut corners somewhere else. So I think Facebook market, Google, gosh, it's just so hard for me to put the mindset on that. Why would you have as many different ways to market yourself? Call centers seems to be another one that's coming back again.
Yeah, because I know like some companies I work with, the call center does like a pretty decent job. Because I know you just give them like a zip code and then they like dial that specific area. What I have found is that typically they pay by the lead. Usually those are people who are actually looking. It's pretty good profit for them because what they do is they have like 5, 10, 20 roofers in the area. And then they just kind of like give them the leads, and whoever can close. So there has been some successes and some not so good successes, because sometimes it's like it's just one homeowner with like 10 different roofers showing up and you're all fighting for that because you're sharing the leads. But there's also times where if you're a really good closer and if the actual call center isn't sharing the leads with a bunch of people, then it like works really
Yeah,
well.
I've been in scenarios before. I've showed up to somebody's house and they thought I was the other roofer that was scheduled for the time. When it wasn't an exclusive lead, so to speak. So I'd show up and they had 3 or 4 people call them and contact, and they just knew somebody was coming, and so they didn't know which companies were being represented, and that's not fun. You do try and separate yourself through communication and relationship, but it's never fun for the homeowner. I want the homeowner to have a seamless and a pressure-free experience. And that doesn't happen when you have 15 guys coming and knocking on the door.
Yeah, it's like when everyone's kind of offering kind of the same thing, roughly. It's so hard to tell which one you're gonna go with, because at that point you just might as well go with the cheapest one. It's like the mindset. But you don't want to be fighting over price, because at that point it's just like a fight to the bottom. And
I say with that too, and that on that remark that you made, I'll just go with the cheapest one. Is you get in this industry what you don't pay for, and what I mean by that is if you try and go for the cheapest guy every time, guess what? That's usually where you're going to have problems because we all are fishing from the same area from when it comes to material, and if we all have a very similar cost structure, and then we all similar labor structure that's out there. When somebody's price is way low, there's a reason why, and they're reusing material, they're cutting corners, and that's why you run into that problem because they're banking on the fact, literally banking on the fact that you're not going to get up on the roof and know what to look for. You probably won't even get up on the roof, and they're long gone by the time the leak happens, and that's where the bad reputation in this business happens. If they're not there to follow up and come back out and check on it, you got what you paid for. Now you're paying for somebody else to come out and repair it, and you're going to wind up paying more in the long run. So I just don't see that happening to homeowners.
yeah, that's the funny thing, because if you got a shortcut and save money, you end up paying twice. Once
Yep.
for the
So
bad job, once for a good job.
So that's why I say that you get what you don't pay for. Everybody always says you get what you pay for. I was like, well, not in our business. You get what you don't pay for. If you're getting crappy service and crappy materials. So
No, that makes a lot of sense. But what's really interesting is that you said capital was like a big thing. Obviously, people have like different roofs, different things that people can put on aluminum, shingles. Like, what do you recommend customers get for the best bang to buck in terms of like efficiency? Something that will last like pretty decently long, but isn't going to cost like an arm and a leg if you were like a customer.
again, it's going to depend on your market. I think one thing that's very popular in Texas right now is impact resistant shingles. They're an asphalt based shingle. They're a little bit thicker gauge. And so they have a higher rating of hail impact that they can get because that's the biggest, I think, issue in Texas. Average roof's going to be 7 to 10 years here because you're going to get hit with some mammoth type hail here because we sit in the #1 market for hail when it comes to size of the hail, frequency of hail, wind, and the size houses that we have. It's the #1 market. That's why we have 8 to 10,000 roofers in DFW roofers. So I like the impact resistant, but it's not for everybody because you're going to pay maybe a 20% premium off a regular shingle to get that. Maybe that may be a little bit high to get that roof put on the impact resistant shingle. We get 2-inch hail come here, it voids that warranty that's taking place. So you really have to sit down and go, okay, what's the cost to go impact resistant? And then what's the discount I'm going to get off my insurance because insurance will usually help you and discount your policy because you've got an impact rated shingle on that. So you have to really look at where's the break even. If I'm less than 5 years, I'm probably not going to do an impact resistant. So there's one shingle that I really love that's out there. It's out of Canada, where you're from. That's they take recycled tires and they turn them into rubber shingles. So they have a very, very great impact rating on that. It rates the same as everything else, but they have all these demos and videos of them firing these big ice cannonballs into this thing, and it, and I think the company's been around for 20 something years, and I don't think they've had a claim yet where that it's been damaged by any hail, and it's got a very high wind rating. But to your point, it's expensive. So, I mean, you're looking at where an average roof could probably be about a $500 a square, which is a 10 by 10 section of roof. They're looking at about $1,000 to put that material on. But if I don't have to worry about getting a roof for a while, that's where it can become beneficial to the homeowner. So again, it really takes. It's not just a plug and play plan. It really is. You got to sit down and look at your individual scenario. Have somebody that's willing to take the time to go through it all and make sure you know the pros and cons of every decision that you make.
Absolutely. And I want to just wrap this back around because I know we talked a little bit about your nonprofit, and I do want to close out this talk about the show with that. Just kind of walk me through why you decided to kind of start this nonprofit for the young men.
Guys are dying. The suicide rate for men out there is in the U.S. alone is like 87,000 or something like that men a year that commit suicide, and it's because they don't have any hope. They don't have a friendship ring around something in their life. It feels hopeless. So we've been doing this, like I said, for 13, 14 years, and what we've seen is we bring guys in, we show them who they are, who they're called to be with God first, and help them get that relationship going. But then we surround them with other brothers, as we call it, to do life together, to understand that I'm not looking for you to be a saint. I'm not looking for the perfect guy. It's understand that I'm going to mess up, but you'll love me because I am who I am. So I accept you for your mess ups. I don't care what you've been through. It's like, let's just strive to help each other get better every single day. So we've been doing this for 13 years with guys. We've seen thousands of guys come through from. You'd be surprised at some of the backstories on these that just give you goosebumps when you hear about it. But we want guys to know that you don't have to do life alone. And we're not a church. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just that there's no judgment here. I've been in churches where I wasn't allowed to come because of X, because of my past, or they look at me funny, or what I wear. Let guys be guys, man. I mean, we're smoking cigars out there. On times we have bonfires, up on stage. Guys are real, and sometimes when they're real and they're raw, it's not acceptable in some brick and mortar locations because of the language that may be used. Because it's a guy's hurting in his heart. He needs to talk to somebody without judgment, and that's what we do. We allow guys to be who they are, and let's come alongside them and say, hey, man, I ain't perfect either, but let's do this together. And it's been fantastic for the years.
Fantastic, Garrett. And to close this off, is there any question that I should have asked that I didn't get a chance to ask that you're like, John, I wish you asked me that? Is there a question that I should have asked you that I didn't get a chance to? Or have we kind of covered everything?
Oh, kind of floating along through this, and you've done a great job asking me questions. There's just so much information that we can go in through both roofing side, through marketing, and also through the nonprofit. I'm more than willing to ever talk to anybody about this because this is my passion. My work is really to fund my ministry. That's why I'm dedicating it all to God. I've been that guy. I've been in my mid-30s, midlife crisis, wondering where I'm going to be. And, I had good high school friends, which I still have good friends, but I need friends that will help me, iron sharpen iron here, as opposed to just being a yes friend where, hey, yeah, go out and do that bad thing. I'll act along with you, hold my beer. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be a guy that helps people get stronger and better because a better man is a better husband. A better husband is a better father. A better father is a better leader in their communities, in their churches, or wherever they're serving. And that's what I always strive for. Is I want to see guys come to know who God's called them to be. And it may take you 30 days, it may take you 30 years, but I just want to be there along that journey to help you get there. And so that's why, I give a percentage of each of the routes that I do back to Men Alive Expedition to help fund that mission because we're not stopping. Our mission is to have another 1,000 men come through in the next couple of years. And so it's going to take a lot to get there.
Absolutely. As they say, rising tide raises all boats. Last thing is, if you could only have one piece of marketing or one piece of wisdom on your social media, if there was like one piece I could leave and everything else is gone, what's the one message that you would leave?
That's a tough question. I want people to know why I'm doing what I'm doing. Is because this, like I said, I think this industry is got a lot of bad, it's got a bad reputation, a lot of bad people. I want people to understand that there are good people out there that do great business. It's not full of, and it's not every person. So I need something that brings that message across that there's still good people out there, but do take your time to do the research and find the right ones. And I think it's so important to have something on a message, a video, a loop, or something like that that's plain that conveys that story, that message on why I'm doing this because I'm not doing it just for the money. I'm doing it for the money. I'm doing it for the money to fund my mission, but I'm also trying to change an industry that's gone awry over the years. So I need marketing that can tell that story.
Absolutely. Garrett, I wanted to say thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate you up on the call. Your story is very inspiring and hopefully it can help a ton of people as well.
Yeah, and as we work together, you'll learn more of my story on that and the deeper depths of that. But I want to thank you. Thank you for offering this up to me and to whatever audience sees this. But if there's anything I can ever do for you, you know that this is the beginning of a relationship for you and I, and many levels. I hope. And friends.
Absolutely. Everybody who's watching this, I will leave a link to Garrett's nonprofit, to his website, and to his social media. So if you want to reach out to Gerrit, make sure you check the link in the description down below. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you until next time.
Thanks, John.